And that brings us to the latest installment of our continuing series, which we call Obama and the World. Tonight's topic, the global economy. And joining us for much more about this are Marcus Mabry, the international business editor of the New York Times, and John Authers, the investment editor of the Financial Times. Good to see both of you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, President Obama seems to have tried all kinds of stimulus programs, and yet the United States economy seems to be kind of recovering very slowly. Give us some perspective on how important the success or the failures of the president's economic policies are sort of tied in, dependent on what is happening overseas.
Well, you've got a very cheap dollar at the moment. It's not a policy they particularly like to shout about, and that ought to be able to stimulate exports in some fashion. At the moment, you have obviously we're used to the idea that the US consumer drives this economy, and in many ways it drives the world's economy. The US is the world's consumer of last resort. While we're getting over this debt binge, plainly people are going to be paying down debt or deleveraging, as people say in the jargon. That means that it's more important to try exporting, more important to try to find other markets overseas to take up the slack. That means that the emerging markets become all the more important.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on this? Is what's happening overseas very much dependent on the success or the failure of the president's economic policies here at home, and how they then have an impact for the rest of the world?
Well, there was once a time in which the American economy was the driver for the global economy. So it was the United States economy that led, the engine that led the world economy out of recession in the past. We're at an incredible turning point right now in global economic history, whereby China, for the first time, is actually the engine of growth for the global economy. So whether or not there's going to be a double-dip recession in the world, it actually has a lot more to do with the Chinese economy than the U.S. economy at this point. That's kind of a startling turn of events.
Right.
The president has announced that he's going to actually he's going to propose that the U.S. actually stop increasing spending on discretionary spending outside of security. If that were to happen, it will the rest of the world will react very positively, especially China, which has so much American debt in its hands. And that actually would, in the end, I think, right the American economy and have some stabilizing impact on the global economy if it were to happen and Americans actually got their spending under control.
Right. So the global economy that we're in right now, I mean, we had this report about how a lot of the growth is being driven, or the recovery is certainly being driven in Asia, and the example very much was, again, focused on China. What does this mean for job prospects in the United States?
Well, this is the sad thing. As we said in the past, it was the American consumer that drove the American economy into recovery. The fact that the American consumer is very reticent to spend as he or she once did because of the weak job situation in the United States is very important. The American consumer may not be the one leading this economy out of recession because we can't be certain if you're going to have a job tomorrow. That lack of job creation has really been key for that reason. One would hope that exports would be the savior for that American economy. But with Europe barely out of recession itself, and with Asia still not buying a lot of American goods, it's not quite clear where the growth engine will be for the American economy itself.
Precisely. I mean, at the moment, you would normally expect job growth to come last after various other things pick up. Companies start building more because they find there's more demand. Then they realize they need to start hiring people to make the extra stuff. If you do see job growth resume and all the trends in terms of the number of people signing on for new unemployment insurance suggest that it really should resume quite soon, then maybe we do see a way through this vicious cycle that we've just been discussing. It really is critical that it's not just a matter of the politics of the situation or of human pain. It really is very critical indeed that we start to see job growth come through very soon in the States.
Just again, a little bit about these steps that China has taken. It's going to be limiting lending to help prevent a real estate bubble like the one that we had here in the United States. What are these moves going to mean for us, for the US economy?
Well, let's start with the context. They did allow new loans to double last year. From one year to the next, the total loans that were being extended doubled, which is an extraordinary expansion. And plainly, the risk of a bubble is very real indeed. Some people will tell you that they're already there. The measures they're taking so far are quite incremental. There are many different incremental measures. It somewhat interests me that the market is obviously very nervous about this, because you would think they would want to see the Chinese knowing that this crude expansion they've engineered has to be watered down, has to be stepped back before it leads to a bubble. At the moment, it looks as though there is at least nerves about whether the Chinese can pull that off.
Okay.
The real fear is that China will actually reduce their lending too much and actually create a break that actually stops the growth in China and therefore slows the growth, as we were saying, for the whole global economy.
Just very, very briefly, a couple of thoughts from each of you about the recovery in Europe. What are the prospects going forward, and what are the ramifications, the implications for the United States?
I think European growth is going to be weak. I think it's going to continue to be weak. There's a political ramification for Europe, which is the importance of the continent continuing to recede. The ramification for the U.S. is that there won't be anyone to buy American goods.
And I think, looking at Europe today, we had the news that the UK, my home country, had finally come out of recession. It's very interesting. They bet the farm on the banking industry in a way that even the States didn't. It's very hard to see how their recovery can even be as strong as that of the US.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.